An Untold Connection by Alex Schumann. Is it possible to connect with someone who's over 8 times as old as you, can't speak your language, and is partially deaf? When there's no real way for two people to communicate with spoken or written words, sometimes that can make a bond stronger than the words that other bonds are formed off of. That is the relationship with my great aunt Samiran. She was the sweetest old lady who had ever lived, with over 90 years of age under her belt. She had an eternity of wisdom and life experience to bestow onto me and my siblings. Every day I would get home from school, I would sit and have tea with her. To this day, I still have tea at that same time. I pray before my meals and pray before I go to bed. These are all the things that she would make me do, and that I still do to this day. My aunt was brave like no other. While living in Iraq, she went to the military officials, and without a moment of hesitation in her speech, and with forged documents changing his birth date, demanded that they send her brother back for military service, and got them to send him back. That man is my grandpa, and he is still alive to this day, thanks to the sheer aura that my great aunt possessed. Now, my aunt was not only courageous, the likes of which no man has seen to this day, but she had a sixth sense that I feel every old person has. If you walked into a room, and from just the sheer tone of the first words you uttered, and how you looked, she could tell if something was wrong and what it was. Every time I came home from school with a tummy, she would be there for me with a nice cup of tea and some Vernors, without me even having to tell her what was wrong. My aunt never learned English. She didn't even know how to read Chaldean, her home language back in Iraq. She was from a different time where women weren't really educated. Only her youngest sister and my grandpa knew how to read and write. But around 6 daily, my aunt would always call me over for tea. Hey, aha, Alec. Come here, Alex. I would sluggishly walk over, not knowing what for, but I always knew why she wanted me. She'd be sitting at the dinner table, with 2 cups of tea ready, mine bigger and with sugar in it, just the way I like it. She always knew that. We would sit there drinking our tea when suddenly she would try and strike up a conversation. Alec, my halakibetu, habibi. What food do you want, Alex? Leki bichumendi. I don't want anything. My responses were always like this, choppy, short, and straight to the point. My grammar was so limited in its vocabulary that it was all I could ever manage. What? I never understood the words, and I would sit there speechless. She was speaking gibberish, and I was a newborn to her. I would be excelling in my classes, and none of it would matter, for she didn't know what that meant. It's okay, Hania fell in the garage. It's okay. Is she okay? What did she think? Did she think I was confused about Hania falling? That must be it. Not that I don't understand the words she's saying, but instead she thinks that I was worried about Hania. I would keep listening to her tales, scavenging for the few words that I understood, putting them together like a puzzle, and by the end I would have the story put together. I understood the stories. I felt the meaning of the stories, though I didn't make out the words. I made out the images that her emotions and tone painted for me. Her voice was the brush, and my mind was the canvas. She was painting the story into my brain. My aunt had the power to make you feel a story, even when you didn't know what the story truly was. My aunt worried about everyone in the family. Every time. It was around 5:30. She would start going around at the house, telling everyone, Hey, you aha, ma, ihalakibetu. Come here. What food do you want? Every single day she would do this. Made sure that everyone in our family was fed. My brother felt embarrassed by this, and would always yell back, saying that they ate at school, or that they weren't hungry. But I could never say no to her. The fact that she put in the time and effort to do this, and they cared enough to ask about us, made it worth it for me to give back some kind of start. I would get up and ask for some food, just so she could make it for me, and I could see the smile on her face. It made her day every single time to care for us. My aunt and I shared a connection like no other. She was one person who could never be held down and who always got back up, and her influence was immeasurable. I barely understood the word that she said to me through my 16 years of life, but I understood every meaning that she gave to me, every piece of wisdom that she dug into my brain. We had a connection, one that words could not describe.